we never really finished our brief consideration of the Gnostic Gospels, and that is what we are going to do tonight, and in all likelihood by way of a summary type of presentation a week from tonight. So now we have, after we have taken a look at the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, we shall take a look at a scripture, a very interesting scripture, which has also a very interesting story behind it, even behind its discovery, which I think is worth taking a look at, which is referred to as the Gospel of Truth. Now, it was generally assumed for quite a while, on the basis really of the principal scholarly figure who rescued the Gospel of Thomas, namely our good but by now departed friend Professor Gilles Quispel of the University of Utrecht, who had been out here several times and who spoke for us and with whom we were quite friendly. That on the basis of his statements, the story was that Professor Quispel had discovered a codex in an antiquary shop in Brussels, and when he looked at it, he saw that it was in Coptic, and that it could be clearly identified as a copy of an ancient treatise, or at least it contained that treatise. There were others in it that came to be known as the Gospel of Truth, and that for a long, long time had been attributed to the great Gnostic teacher Valentinus. Now, that's what we all thought. And then yet another incident surfaced, and this may not be of very great importance to most of us, although certainly they somehow play into the discovery and into the content of the discovery, that as early as in the winter of 1948-49, there appeared a mysterious man at the offices of the Bolingen Foundation in the USA and offered a Coptic Gnostic Codex of around 100 pages in length for sale. He asked for $12,000, which at that time I would say was really quite a fortune. And the foundation refused the deal. You know, the foundation, the Bolingen Foundation, always had a number of very cautious Swiss businessmen in its leadership, and they obviously thought that that was too much money. So this person then returned to Europe, and no more was heard of the matter until quite a bit later, when the aforementioned Professor Quispel of the University of Utrecht in Holland came to Switzerland, as he himself told us, in great haste and well-nigh anxiety, because he wanted to convey to Dr. Jung as to what a great treasure he had found. And that great treasure, of course, was the codex that contains, among others, the Gospel of Truth. And then, in any event, the upshot of that was that in August 1951, it's a fairly short time after the codex originally turned up, the Bollingen Foundation decided to make the money available to purchase the codex, and consequently two of Jung's collaborators, Dr. C.A. Meyer, who was the head of the Jung Institute for a long time, Dr. C.A. Meyer of Zurich, and the aforementioned Professor Gilles Quispel of Holland instituted a search, and on May 10, 1952, Professor Quispel purchased in the city of Brussels the Codex in behalf of the C.G. Jung Institute. In 1955, on the occasion of his 80th birthday, C.G. Jung, with great and visible emotion, solemnly accepted the Codex, which was now named the Jung Codex, in behalf of the Jung Institute. His acceptance speech was reprinted in volume 18 of his collected writings, and it is really one of the most moving documentations of Jung's love and interest in Gnosticism, which occasionally is questioned. But I think by now our efforts, certainly including my own, in what really turned out to be a sort of a little pioneering book, the Gnostic Jung, it is fairly well established that Jung's interest in the Gnostic teachings, in the Gnostic philosophy, was very, very great. After Jung's death and the stabilization of the political conditions in Egypt, which had been a powerful factor in the difficulties that the scholars encountered when the Naj Hammadi collection has first surfaced from the sands of Upper Egypt, and which went on for years. But by that time things have sort of settled down, and the Jung Codex, as it was called, was in the possession of the C.G. Jung Institute in Switzerland, to the regret of some of us, and I still join those regretful ones, as to the regret of some of us. The Codex, which, as I will mention to you shortly, enumerate you shortly, contains a number of other scriptures beside the Gospel of Truth. The Codex, the Jung Codex, was returned to Egypt, to the regret of some of us, because the Egyptian government has never taken care of the Naj Hammadi collection particularly well, and still doesn't. And I have spoken to several people, one of them the late and much regretted, our artist and friend, Mr. Jan Sater, when he went to Cairo, wanted to see the Naj Hammadi collection. So he started asking around, and usually all the people whom he spoke to, from taxi cab drivers to museum people, he says, "Why do you want to see that? That's Coptic stuff. Go and see what the pharaohs have left behind." But he says, I am not interested in that right now. This is what I'm interested in. Took them all kinds of shenanigans to get to a mediocre building in Cairo, which is called the Coptic Museum, and that is where they found the Naj Hammadi codices, not very well taken care of. However, my purpose is really not to complain about the Egyptian government of that time, although I think complaints would be quite in place. But the way the Nag Hammadi library is organized, that there are individual codices, and this is worth recounting, because if we know the format of the documents, then we will be less easily led astray by various rumors and false news about the collection. The Nag Hammadi library, and it is justly named a library, contains I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but it's in all the books, contains a considerably large collection of what are called codices. A codex is a collection of pages, and the pages are put one on top of the other in a certain order, and then on top of the what is to become a volume, on top of the volume you have a piece of leather, which becomes the front cover, and below it you have another piece of leather, which is the bottom cover, and then there is a leather tongue, something like a shoelace, if you want a familiar analogy, which is put through all of these and put together. A codex, therefore, such as the Nag Hammadi codices, are the oldest form of a book. There is none older, because before that you had what came to light from the shore of the Dead Sea scrolls, which are usually made out of parchment, and they are writing rolled up in form of a scroll, and then it's tied so the scroll won't come open. However, the material of the scrolls, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, is parchment. Parchment is an animal product made out of animal skins, which are treated in certain ways. And when one compares various methods of binding and of publication, the parchment is not the best material. It is subject to various forms of depredation, which make then the writing on the scrolls less legible. That is why there are a whole bunch of the Dead Sea Scrolls that have never been properly deciphered because the surface on which the writings exist has deteriorated so terribly badly. This, however, is not true of the Nag Hammadi library because it is written on papyrus. Papyrus, the very word papyrus, is the predecessor of our word paper. And it is material that is made out of a plant, a certain type of reed that grows along the Nile River, and that does not deteriorate after the fashion of parchment. So this was definitely the great boon to the scholars at the discovery of the Nag Hammadi library. Now then, within the codices, within a volume, shall we say, for the most part, there are several pieces, like chapters, although they are often not related to each other. These are referred to as treatises. So you have a codex, and within the codex you have several treatises. So it is with the one where the Gospel of Truth is found. Here is a brief list of the treatises in the Jung Codex, which is also, the codices are numbered for purposes of scholarship, and this codex came to be called Codex 1. So if you go to Cairo, and if they are gracious enough to show you anything that you want to see, go Codex 1, which is also known as the Jung Codex. Here are the contents in terms of treatises of the Jung Codex. A letter of James, the letter to Reginus, which is also called the Treatise on the Resurrection, a treatise on the three natures, which is also called the Tripartite Tractate, and Jung called it by the Latin name of Codex Hermeticus Tripartitus. Its origins are of hermetic nature, and then the much damaged pages of one called the Prayers of the Apostles, and which contains a fairly still legible prayer of the Apostle Paul, and last but not least, the Gospel of Truth. Now, this may have been a little overkill that I told you all this information, but especially in view of the fact that rumors and what in journalism we call by the French name of canards. A canard is a duck, and it means false information. So, for instance, I would say much of the information in our public media qualifies as a canard. So if you look at the television, look at the computer and things like that, you may hear a somewhat subdued quacking in the background, quack, 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 because it's the duck, But in any event, this was not the case in this instance. Now, it was unlike some of the, or maybe unlike really the majority of the Nag Hammadi scriptures, the Gospel of, there was quite a bit of news throughout the century about this mysterious Gospel of Truth. Writing around 180 AD, which is pretty doggone early, the noted heresy hunter, Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon, mentioned a Gospel of Truth and said that it was written by the Gnostic teacher Valentinus, and he quoted from it. The scholars felt confident that this indeed was the long-lost Gospel of Truth, and which they was now in their hands. Professor Quispel wrote about this in one of the publications issued about that time, and I quote, "It appeared that the Gospel of Truth, beyond doubt, came from the school of Valentinus, and was identical with the writing which was referred to by Irenaeus. A new heretical gospel, the only one of its kind which is as yet available to students, has been discovered. Our surmise has proven to have been correct." And I remember when he was recounting, for instance, the sales pitch that he gave to Dr. Carl Jung, when he post haste on the fastest available train came from Brussels to Zurich, and they said, "Dr. Jung, we have the Gospel written by Valentinus. We have Valentinus' own writing. And certainly Jung was quite happy about that. I might as well comment, I probably did that in connection with Thomas or Philip, but I might as well comment again on the word gospel. For a while I couldn't figure out, because, I know a few languages, ancient and modern, this and that, that what, Evangelion is the Greek word, and Evangelium is the Latin word, Heilige Schrift in various things would be German and so forth. Where does this word gospel come from? Until I asked my late friend Dr. John Algeo of the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia, I said, John, where the heck does that word come from? After all, he was the editor of various scholarly English descriptions of books. In that way, he said, it comes from the Old English God spell. I said, God spell? That's something that sounds to me would be more appropriate for witches or something. Because you know how I have all kinds of stupid jokes and puns and things of that sort. One of them being as to when the witches invite you to come in their house, they say, come in for a spell. I have others, but I really don't want to discredit myself this early in the evening. In any event, so what it really is a translation into English of the idea, because it's really ideas that should be translated rather than words. So it's a translation of the idea that there is a good news that is available. And that what is in that particular book, whether we are talking about the Gospel of John or the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Philip or the Gospel of Truth, the news that you can read in such a scripture are of a joyous nature. What they contain is a good news, is a joy, which is probably really much different from what can be said about quite a few books of the Old Testament. I mean, I would say that if I want to read a happy book, I'm probably not going to read Deuteronomy or some of the 5 books of Moses, and I don't want to insult anybody of the Jewish faith, because those are the sacred scriptures and they all have their places. But let's say most of the Old Testament is not exactly what I would call good news. On the other hand, the New Testament really in many ways is. I remember when I was a student, in a monastery, and we were encouraged to read the Bible, and I went and complained to my favorite teacher, and I told him, a lot of this is not really the kind of stories that I like to read. Why? He said, well, I understand, my boy. He said, what you guys should read is the New Testament. He says, that will make you or probably most of it will make you much more hopeful and happy. Don't worry about too much of the other. And I think he was right. But what we have here with the book, which was referred to where Irenaeus was writing in Latin in his various journals. And he referred to the Gospel of Truth as Evangelium Veritatis, which is, of course, Latin for the Gospel of Truth. Let's say the best way for us to deal with this, and I probably will have some material left over for next Friday, is to look at some of the relevant passages from the Gospel of Truth, and then you will see what I mean. Here is the introductory paragraph, the prologue, as we might call it, of the Gospel of Truth in English translation by the noted American scholar, Coptic scholar Kendrick Grober, whose translation can really be trusted. It's the best. And moreover, we had personal contact, not with Professor Grober, but with a long-time student of his, who then became a professor himself. So we have a little contact there. So here is a good English translation of the prologue of the Gospel of Truth. The Gospel, it starts out, the Gospel of Truth is a joy for those who have received from the Father of Truth the gift of knowing Him through the power of the Word, the Logos, that came forth from the pleroma, the fullness, the Word who, and it's a personal person, the Word who in the thought and mind, who is in the thought and mind of the Father, that is the one who is addressed as the Savior, the Greek word soter, that being the name of the work he is to perform for the redemption of those who became ignorant of the Father, while the name of the gospel is the proclamation of hope, being discovery for those who search for Him. This is the prologue, the first paragraph. I think that especially when we cast our telescopic modern Gnostic gaze on this particular passage, we can already discover some very important keynotes of it. Because there is a message of good news, gospel, which is the proclamation of a hope and a joy for certain people. That is what it asserts. For whom is this gospel a joy? Not for everyone, but for those who have gnosis. This gnosis is defined here as the gift or the grace of knowing the Father of truth by way of His word that came from the fullness. Now, all of this becomes only comprehensible if we perceive that the gospel of truth has as its intent to attach a specifically Gnostic interpretation to what others would call the Christian message. The gospel of truth is an example of how the Christian story can be understood in really transcendental terms, in terms of Gnosis. It is a Gnostic evaluation of the central idea of the Christian system of belief. Here I think I may engage in a little bit of additional personal exegesis. What do we mean by this? We mean that as the prologue of the Gospel of Truth already indicates, something has happened. An item of good news has come forth from an authoritative and deific source. And that this message, this gospel, this God spell in turn can facilitate the recovery in the human consciousness of a connection which for all intents and purposes has been lost. What kind of connection are we talking to, and to what does the connection connect? Well, it connects to the source of the deepest aspects of human consciousness. Something has happened. It might be characterized, I don't think I ever used that term before, but the great fatal amnesia had come upon the human, the genus human. At one time we knew something. More than that, what we knew was close to us, was alive and talking to us in its own way, and that has somehow gone by the wayside through the centuries, through the millennia, I don't know, perhaps through the millions of years. And this is the great catastrophe, the catastrophe of an amnesia. I see, we have forgotten something. And what we have forgotten is extremely important. What we have forgotten is as vital as it can be, because it relates to who and what we really are. Now, if you walk down Beechwood Drive and you courageously confront one of the innumerable people who are walking with their dogs, either south or north, and ask them, why are we here? I don't think they will even have the courage to tell you we are here to take care of dogs. Although it would be a nice idea. But we literally don't know why we are here. And we don't know when we are little, when we are children. We don't know when we are adolescents. We don't know when we are in our 20s. And for the most part, we don't know it when we are 80s or 90s. Some of us are still digging for it, even at that advanced age, and you're looking at one. Yeah. But so there is something that we have forgotten. And this something is terribly important. It is, in fact, in various forms and various modifications, in various ideas, various words, various paragraphs. It is what is missing in our lives. Depending on our orientation, we think that we are missing this, that, or the other thing. I would say in this materialistic civilization, probably once you scrape off the surface material, you would probably find that most people feel that they are lacking in material riches, material goods. And no doubt we all could use more money, and some of us don't have any. So even a little bit would help. But as I think quite a few people find out sooner or later, when we then acquire some material goods, we find out that that's not what we were missing at all. That there is still a tremendously large empty space in our lives, because that was not it. And so we go on to various things. That's sort of what Gnostic would call the Heletic position, because Hele is matter, the material. And you say, oh, well, the modern quantum physics has done away with matter, and it's now we should say energy. People told me that. I said, you know what? If you want to call it energy, what keeps us in ignorance and in poverty of mind as well as of body in this world, if you want to call it energy, it's bad energy, all right? So let us say, you can call it this, you can call it that, but there is something here that keeps us from knowing what we ought to know, for feeling what we ought to feel, for doing what we ought to do. And the result of it is that we are unfulfilled, we are unhappy. Obviously, when you can't even think what you would like to think, when you can't desire what you like to desire, or if you manage to break through and desire, then what you desire never happens. That's pretty sad, It's really sad. And yet this is our fate. And so this is where we find that when a disclosure, a scripture, whatever it may be, is capable of bringing us closer to what we are missing, to beginning to have an inkling of the knowing what we really want to know, to come closer to feeling what we really want to feel, and to experience what we really want to experience. Anything that brings us close to that is good news, God spell, evangelium indeed. So here then is the ancient, we can call it Gnostic because that is one of the, among the so-called Gnostics, that is one of the last times when these issues were very clearly and in an unambiguous manner articulated. But it runs as a secret and frequently repressed and confounded tradition throughout history. So what I'm telling you now is a line of thought, a way of dealing with reality that was always there but was covered up, taken away, mixed with confusing elements. As Aldous Huxley had pointed out, I have a quotation, I think it's actually in my notes, but I won't bother with it now. He said that the problem is that there was real knowledge, that there was a real contact with something very, very great and very transcendental. And then in came the representatives of the lesser functions of the human mind, and they mixed it up with things that don't belong there. They mixed it up with ideas that have nothing to do with the truth. They mixed it up with rigid commandments, which if you don't follow, you're going to be in a very bad way. In other words, when the human mind, the lesser aspects of the human consciousness got hold of this primeval truth, speaking of the gospel of truth, they corrupted it and covered it up. And somehow deeply still within us there is an inkling, a feeling, somewhere in the great darkness, like a will-o'-the-wisp, there is a little light. And this little light tells us, conveys to us, telepathically influences us and says, you know, there is a truth, which is in Greek is called aletheia. And it's a feminine word, and it's connected with various goddesses. There is a truth. And if you come close to that truth, even if you just sort of circumambulate it, you know, the circumambulation is an ancient symbol of trying to get close to something or to somebody. And in the mandala, in the middle is the point of power. And around it are various designs, and there the mind and the eye goes around, but it goes around because it feels that there is something great, something wonderful, something liberating, something ultimately informative at the center. And to that center we want to proceed. And so that is really what we are talking about. And what is the, let's see, what is the discernible, the intellectually comprehensible, essential content of that message or of that secret as it has become to so many people? It's really very simply expressed, but it is a momentous power and momentous importance, and it takes at least a lifetime to get close to it. I can assure you of that. So what is that? It is that our essence, which is a term that some of the great Gnostic teachers throughout the ages, clear down to the Christian mystics of the Rhineland mystics and people like Hildegard of Bingen and Meister Eckhart and people like that used your essence. They didn't say any longer your soul or even your spirit, but your essence, essentia. You know, that's a very precious word. No one knows that better than a Hungarian. And why is that? Because we have a wine which comes from the region of Tokaj in northeastern Hungary, you know. This, you can buy Tokaj wine, you can buy it in 7 different grades of strength and of sweetness. But you can also buy a form of it that is called the essentia, the essence of Tokaj. And now I don't really want to conduct here a class in wine growing and in wine making. I am not a little old winemaker, but let's say it is that within which the nature and the potential benefit of something is concentrated to the ultimate degree. That is the essence. So sometimes, maybe just a very few times in our lives, we have an experience and we say, aha, this is what I have been looking for since my childhood. This is This is the center, the kernel, the essence that I have been looking for. And when you as much as make a little contact with that essence, I assure you the experience is fabulous. It's fabulous. It's something that you not only will never forget, but I hazard an educated guess that you will take that experience of the essence with you wherever you go when you put this body aside. That it never will be lost, because it is of such an incredible power and meaning. And what our Gospel of Truth calls it is the aletheia, the truth. This is what is really true. It is not maybe true, it is not possible, it is not probable, it is not a likelihood, it is the truth. And of course we find it, once we know what we are talking about, we find it of course in the New Testament as well. Jesus says to the people, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Free of what? Free of all the stuff that is weighing us down and bothering us and tormenting us. Everything, from the oppressive governments to the incongruities and painful experiences of life, yet all of this we can cut across with something that can be called the truth. And what is the truth? You know, it's asked in the Bible, what is truth? that which has no contradiction, that which has no plausible opposing statement or recognition. It stands like an incredible pillar of rock, and it cannot be assailed by anything. People try to do it. People come along and say, no, this is not really true, and this is an illusion, and so forth. But at the same time, it is so being connected with our essence. It is the thing that our interior essence responds to. And many experiences of life which we value very highly, and which certainly should be valued very highly, such as loving kindness, love, beauty, all of these are love, beauty, and truth. The ancients knew it well. And this essence is something that cannot be taken away. All kinds of arguments, all kinds of nonsense can be advanced to it, but somehow it always comes back. It is like nature in a certain respect. And why is it like nature? Because it is our nature. This is our nature. This essence is our nature. And then it said in Latin, the Romans had a proverb for everything. My father, who went to Jesuit school for 8 years, he knew quite a few of them. He could regale you for many hours with one Latin proverb after another, but they like to enshrine knowledge and sometimes wisdom in proverbs, because they could be easily remembered. All right, the proverb about this was naturam expellas furca, tamen usque recurret. You can chase out nature with a pitchfork, but it will come right back. So it is true. I mean, you are invaded around here in the summertime by ants. You think you can get rid of them? I got rid of them. I sprayed this and sprayed that. I go back out of the kitchen where they like to congregate, and they're back. You can't. And the same is with plants and so forth. There is an inbuilt power of return and of recurrence in nature. And even though that is true, let's say, in physical nature, how much more true it is in spiritual nature. You can form phrases, you can form expressions and proverbs and statements about it, and even those that are come close to that essence are still far from it, because the actual aletheia, the actual truth, is of such profundity, is of such power, is of such such incredible energy, that if you manage to get hold of that essence and stay with it as long as you can, you would stay there for all eternity, because it is timeless. It has no beginning and no end. It is without substance. It is not this or that or the other thing. It is everything all at once and at the same time nothing. It is why? Because it is full of possibilities. It is full of the ongoing creating power of the truth. That's it. That's what it is doing. And this, of course, is of incredible and tremendous importance. Once you can get hold of that essential truth, it will never leave you. It will never leave you. It is the essence, and that essence is also the essence of fidelity. It is the essence of that which will become yours, because it is you already, and it will never leave you. It can be obscured. The earthly experience can be likened to a lot of things. There can be various similes, and one of them, which we find in the Gospel of Truth, is that at a certain point of the alienation from the essence, that is what has set in. That is the great catastrophe. That is the great amnesia. At a certain point of that, there is how to put it? There is a psycho-spiritual mist, a psycho-spiritual fog that moves in. Now, you've all been in fog. And when it's a really good, strong fog, you can find it in Orange County. I can point out a good point for you. You know what? It changes everything. All of a sudden, the world is not the same. I remember when my church was in Laguna Beach, I was ordained there, and I was a pastor there for a number of years. And in order to go there, we had to go down which at that time was a minor little road off the freeway, was the Laguna Canyon Road. I think it's still there. And you have seen nothing until you have been on Laguna Canyon Road say on Christmas Eve, somewhere about 10 o'clock at night in the fog. It's amazing. All of a sudden you don't know where you are, you don't know what you are, you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you are going, you don't know nothing, as the vernacular would have it. Because somehow this manifestation of nature can disorient you to an incredible degree. Fog is everywhere, so we can experience it, but all of a sudden everything is order. And the truth, the aletheia, has left, and an illusory environment is surrounding you. It's interesting to go through that, actually. But you have to remember that this, in turn, is a very apt metaphor for what the esoteric tradition has always told, going clear back to the early Egyptians, who were probably one of the oldest cultures, civilizations in the world, which says that one time you knew. One time you were one with your essence. One time you were in close association with the truth. And then something happened. Then you began losing it. And but since you have that little inkling, that far memory, as one writer called it, was that John Grant? I think so, about the Egyptian things, the far memory. The far memory tells you, one time you knew, and then something happened and you forgot. But you still know that much that you can know. And if you work at it, and if you place your desire on that, and if you ignore everything else, but keep on says, I want the truth. Why? Because that truth, as it is said in the New Testament, that truth will make me free. And why will it make me free? Because in consciousness, in the spirit, we are not talking here about physical things, but we are talking about mysteries. That mysterious something that is still within you, that mysterious something will take you to the center of the truth. Because the essence that is within you has a source. At least that way it can be expressed. But let's say it is connected with its own kin, like so many others are. Dogs are connected with their own kin. One dog knows another. And so it is. There is a connection. There is a relationship. There is something that ties the alienated, the forgotten, the covered up, the buried essence with its source. And that source is, how can we put it? It is the essence of essences. It is the heart of hearts. It is the truth of truths. And it exists. And one way that we can be convinced that it exists is that its portion, it's the essence of the essential essence is within us. And this portion in turn calls out to its source, which in a lot of these ancient scriptures, like the Gospel of Truth, is referred to as the Father, Pater. Why is it the Father? Because the the Father was conceived in the ancient societies as the ultimate source of the child. You know, they did not have the same kind of knowledge of fertilization as we do, but it's where you come from, and then it reads further to Father of all fatherhood, origin of all origins, and that is true. That is the truth. And therefore, what is it all about? What it is about is to enliven and keep alive this curious essence which sometimes has been described as a spark. You have it in the book of Job as the spark that flies upwards, and sometimes by other words in Blavatsky's secret doctrine, which has a central part, which is the so-called stanzas of Jung. There it is described as the spark from the flame, and the greatest statement to me in the entire secret doctrine is not all the other stuff or the other folderol. Please forgive me, Blavatsky, for putting it that way. But such statements as, set the flame to the spark. Thou art myself. I have clothed myself in thee. So the primordial essence, the first essence, the great essence, and the little essence here have a vital connection. So what you need to do is get the first volume of the Secret Doctrine and read the stanzas of Jung. That is the mystical essence. And of course, the dear old lady had the intention of bringing forth a much more complete and a much more direct and immediate mystical message when she died. Now, one could speculate about that, but in any event, that is the truth. She has described, I don't know why I'm now on that tangent, but I'll get off it quickly if I can. We don't know, of course, why a historical person, even though a great teacher and a great messenger of the aletheia of the truth does anything or doesn't do anything. But I think that she felt that a framework had to be created within which the experience of the truth can occur. Now, you can take this to my theosophical friends. They know that this is the way I feel about it. I was arguing this already when I was 21 years old. I was arguing to the old people here. And you know what? I enjoyed it. So I think I was able to put forth an enjoyable argument and enliven the situation a little bit. But let us say that there is a something that goes way, way beyond all explanations. Every myth has an essence. And since we ourselves are really called to be living myths, mythic life, the hero with 1,000 faces, as Joseph Campbell, God rest his soul, said it. And he said the truth, because the hero with 1,000 faces are us. It's right inside of us. And this, but like a lot of heroes in the great myths, the hero may have wandered away from home. Look at all the knights of King Arthur. they always go away, and then the others say, oh, well, where did so-and-so go? We got to go and find him. So they got to go out in the forest and everywhere looking for him and so forth, because we wander away from the center of things. But even though we wander away, there is something inside of us that still knows the center. And that something is what is affinitized to its origins. It has its, I think it's the Aswata, the mystical tree of Hinduism, which is not all that much different from from other mystical trees, that has its roots in heaven and goes down to the earth. And these roots in heaven are to be discovered and to cultivated by the truth. Because once you touch one of those roots, then you know. You know the truth and the freedom that that truth is going to bestow on you. That freedom is the freedom of your true, ultimate essence of your true selfhood. It is that freedom that we remember. It is that freedom that people who were very much involved in their consciousness with these deeper things, who were philosophers at heart, people like Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, when they were proclaiming freedom, they were proclaiming the freedom that comes from the essence of the human. Not just freedom from external restraints, which of course is part of the story. I assure you, I have lived in freedom, and I have lived in the most awful slavery, shall we say. And there is a great big difference. When you have the feeling that you can move towards something important, that you can move toward the truth, then that truth that you are moving toward, the truth that you seek, comes toward you. Every time you reach out for aletheia, for the truth, and aletheia reaches out for you. It's even embodied in the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, where you have the two fingers, the finger of God and the finger of man meet. There it is. The ultimate source, the essence, the essential essence, meets its extensions and says to it, as indeed it says in one of the scriptures, Gnostic scriptures, that said the great one to the small one, thou art myself. I have clothed myself in thee. In other words, there is this underlying, vital, unextinguishable relationship. Very much like, and that is why the term of father and mother, things like that is used, because it has a certain relationship to, it reminds you in certain ways to the relationship of children and parents. And there is somehow the essence is connected, This is where I came from, and this is the truth. So this is the underlying foundation of everything that the Gospel of Truth speaks about, and it particularly concentrates on the issue of truth. Let me see if I think I can find another good paragraph from the Gospel of Truth here for you. After all, there are lots of them here. All right. And now it speaks here of the all that has come forth from its source. So we are the all. We are within the all of our whole world here. So indeed, the all went about searching for the one for whom it had come forth. And the all was inside of him, the incomprehensible, inconceivable one, who is superior to every thought. Now here already is a confluence of various influences, and it has to do, of course, also with the messengership, with the Logos who comes forth. Ignorance of the Father brought about anguish and terror. So this is what I was speaking about before, the great amnesia, the great blindness, the way we are enveloped in the great fog so that we don't know up from down and east, west, north, south from each other. And the anguish, let's see, ignorance of the Father brought about anguish and terror. And the anguish grew solid like a fog. You know, here is the one that I was getting ahead of myself a little bit. Solid like a fog, so that no one was able to see. For this reason, the error became powerful. And the Greek word used for it here is plane, because so you don't get confused about the languages. Yes, these scriptures are in Coptic, but Coptic is an effusion of two things: the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and Greek. See, so at a certain point, and this was not known because there were the various inscriptions on the Egyptian monuments, and people said, "Well, all right, what do these mean?" Until at the time of I don't know whether Napoleon definitely went to Egypt, whether it was at that very moment or not. Anyway, a French scholar by the name of Champollion went to Egypt, and he discovered the way in which the hieroglyphs and the Coptic writing can be discovered to be the same. So that is when the Western scholars gained access to the hieroglyphs, and that is also when they discovered Coptic, because Coptic was with Greek letters. So this was, very very important issue and a very important discovery. But let me continue with this. So now, an error. The error became powerful. It fashioned its own matter foolishly, not having known the truth. So when I spoke about the great falsehood, that we live in a great falsehood, this in turn gives us erroneous ideas, erroneous inspirations, and leads us away from the truth. So it set about making a creation with all its might, preparing in beauty the substitute for the truth. So it's not only that there is a forgetfulness of the truth, but also to the true nature of things, to a conscious contact with the essence of things, false and confusing elements have been introduced. So it's not just that our memory, the far memory, has been wiped away or at least greatly weakened, but other elements which do not partake of the quality of truth, which don't have a contact with aletheia, these elements have come and taken their place. And so the consequence, or one of the consequences of that, is that the insightful person, the clever man, as Gurdjieff would call him, does not take the appearances within which he lives literally, does not trust them, because they are corrupted. And so something has to be restored. And what is restored is the aletheia, is the truth. And however, fortunately, and certainly the Gospel of Truth bears testimony to it, it's not as bad as it sounds, folks. And it's not as bad as it sounds because these unfortunate and deplorable conditions can be rectified. But the rectification must involve an awakening of the essence within the individuals, and thereby the recovery of a path to the truth. And this, of course, is very, very important. So that it is not about. It is set up. It's set about, namely, the plane, the falsehood, the error, set about making a creation with all its might, preparing in beauty the substitute for truth. So we live in a reality which is a substitute for truth. Now that makes things a little bit difficult, because how are we to discover anything when the very milieu, as we would say in French, the very atmosphere within which we move is full of falsehood? Have you got a solution for it? It's very difficult to find. And yet, where is the solution? Right here. It is nearer than breathing and closer than hands and feet. But it's just because it is so close, because it is our essence, because it is, it transfuses with its light the darkness. That is why it is difficult to discover. So, quite literally, the plot in this paragraph of the scripture, so the thickens. The all is, of course, the greatness, all souls, all mind, all humanity. We all search for our true nature, but we have fallen into ignorance. And this, of course, this always needs to keep in mind. It's easy to bandy the word gnosis around quite a bit, which I have done for many years. But we need to remember that there is the opposite of gnosis, and that is often called in Greek agnosis, non-knowing. And when we lose touch with the essence, with the creative power within, then our ignorance condenses around us like the fog. It becomes substantial and we can't see. Now, I think that some help and some insight here, if we do it right, is available from modern psychology, particularly the psychology of Jung, because, let's say, the psychological terms in large measure to which these conditions that are described here translate are unconsciousness and consciousness. So, what are we unconscious of? That would be another way of asking it, you know. Originally, I mean, I don't need to go into that. Originally, with Freud, the unconscious meant one thing, then with Jung again another. But what are we, you know, what are we unconscious of? That's unbewusst in German. We are unconscious of the truth. And what is the truth? The truth is the importance, the presence, the omnipresence, and ultimately the omnipotence of our essence, and of its connection with the ineffable greatness, which is the essence of being. So there is something very important here, and that is that what we are living in, what we assume to be the real, is at best but a deficient, a partial reality. This is what the Hindus were driving at when they spoke of Maya. Maya, an illusion. And that's my late friend and teacher, Dr. Kuhn, Alvin Boyd Kuhn, was one to say, yes, it's an illusion, but not delusion. So we are led into an illusory world, but it is this illusory world and life is not so powerful that we cannot get through it and come to the truth. So it's not as overwhelming as it seems, because it does seem that way. I mean, you look out what's going on in the world and the various media and things of that sort, and it looks like you're in the middle of an incredible and eternally hopeless balderdash, you know. Yet it's part of that fog. It's part of the obscuration. It's a part of a false reality that in the course of this development came to be. Now I know that because of the way our minds are constituted, what you may be thinking of, or some of you may be thinking of at this time, why did all this happen? Well, I don't think there is a real answer to that. It may well be, but this is purely a conjectural statement. It may well be that there was a need for that essence, that spark from the flame that is within us, to be challenged and to grow into its own potential. And that if it were not confronted with an illusory and confusing reality, it never would have the impetus, the motivation to come to the truth. And as time moves along with us, I won't come to another passage, but I can see already that I'll have to do some of this next week within a larger context, that a potential. Mark you this, because this is a universal statement. I have just uttered a universal truth, aletheia. Now I'm uttering it. That an unchallenged reality is unreal. That reality has to be challenged. The truth has to confront the untruth. Aletheia has to stand facing the falsehood. Why? Because it is only by way of such challenges that the truth becomes more and more real, that we gain more and more opportunity to become united with the truth. If we had if truth, if consciousness, if reality had no opponent, it would be sort of useless. That is what causes these factors, these challenges, cause the essence to become real, to become more and more powerful, and to actually transmute and translate itself into the full development of the truth. Now, just some of you may get a little inkling here of one way that this mystery has been expressed and was really very, very important. Alchemy. It takes two to tango, and so in alchemy you have to have one, you have to have the other. You have to have, and somehow together they add up to when they properly interact with each other long enough and far enough, then there comes about a combination of the various potentialities and of the various factors which excel in their power and in their magnitude any of the component parts that were there before. So here we are, the poor little benighted alchemists toddling around in this world which we try to turn into an alchemical laboratory, But in doing so, we are promoting something. We are moving something. There is something that is developing. There is something that is growing. There is something that is transforming. And that is the something which, of course, in alchemical times would have been called the philosopher's stone, but which also has one key power, one key quality, that it is true. It is the truth. So what we are doing is we are creating the circumstances within which the transcendental truth, the aletheia, can manifest and actually can transform the existing situations into its likeness. So, and we will see that on the hand of some other quotations and so forth next time. But let's say the issue is that we have within us the capacity to overcome the false. Because we are truth makers, we are truth discoverers, we are those who are able to bring forth the truth which can absorb other things. It can even transform a lot of the false into its own likeness, and ultimately having realized its essence, it can make all, as the New Testament says, make all things true. So here we are in a very ambivalent situation, in a situation that is full of illusion, that is full of falsehood, and yet within that worse than ambivalent setting, there is a possibility. There is a way in which things can change for the better. And one more thing I think I need to try to convey before concluding, that along with the presence of this essence within us, which we can call by all kinds of ways, along with this essence there is also an ability whereby we can sift the truth from the false. It's something that takes exercise, it takes application. But wouldn't it be interesting if instead of asking, well, is this particular situation or condition within which we find ourselves, is this going to be to our benefit? Because, the good old ego is always there, to the benefit of the ego. How can I profit from this situation? If not materially, then emotionally. How can I get some emotionally satisfactory experience out of it? And then, of course, is the great, what should I call it? The great difficulty of our age, already for some ages before, and that is the thinking function. The thinking function thinks. Well, what else can we do? The thinking function thinks that it can discover the truth. That within the ability of manipulation, of ratiocination, which is a wonderful Victorian term for reasoning, that within its ratiocination it can actually find something true. But the truth, the aletheia, is beyond the thinking function. The thinking function is destined to become its servant, its handmaiden, as the biblical saying has it. Why? Because there is something superior. And it's so difficult to recognize that, because we are the man, probably derived from manas, the Sanskrit word for thinking, that man is the thinker. But the trouble is that the human is too much of the thinker, because it is fixated in its thinking. Nothing proves it, and proves the disaster that the human mind can create more than the horrible century, the 20th century. The century of Hitler, the century of Stalin, the century of Mao Zedong and Pol Pot and people like that. Where did all that come from? Just pure malice? No. Mind, thinking. Wrong-headed thinking. That brings forth ideas and brings forth theories and makes promises that are never kept, but the opposite of which are kept. And that is one of the great problems. This is how Plane, the error, makes its world. And so we really have a very portentous choice here, to continue to look for that which is true. And well, again, these things are hard to speak about because they are really experiential in nature. But let's say, if you develop a sense of truth. Then when you encounter that which is true, some little bell or big bell goes off in you. Yeah, this is it. This is true. This is true. There is, because then our essence responds to the true and rejects the false. And so, to conclude this, let me say the big picture of the tradition, of the tradition of truth, of the gospel of truth. The big picture is that we are an embodiment of the eternal reality of the eternal truth, that for reasons of its own has come into manifestation clear down to the physical level. And in the course of this development, of this emanation, no garden of paradise, no talking snake, these are very imperfect metaphors that came up at a particular history, but rather that we have come forth from a great and eternal and absolutely, this is a word that might be used as a synonym for the aletheia, for the truth, authenticity. The old existentialist Kierkegaard, the gloomy Dane, and his buddies, and Martin Heidegger and so forth, they called it authenticity. When something is authentic, autos ens, it's in itself it is true. What is not authentic is falsehood. It falls apart. So there is a great, eternal, ever-abiding, mysterious and mystical authenticity. And we have come from that. We are part of that. Inside of us there is the essence that belongs to that, and that therefore still has a sort of a fiery, golden, umbilical cord that joins us to it. And when we are conscious of that, when we get hold of that cord that joins us to the eternal truth, then we become more and more an instrument and ultimately an effective embodiment of that truth. And the falsehood, the Maya, the illusion and its delusions and so forth will go away. But once again, I like to put in the caveat, and that will be sort of my last observation now, is it doesn't have anything to do with belief. Whether you believe in reincarnation, or whether you believe in one lifetime, or whether you believe in Karl Marx, you know what, doesn't make a darn bit of difference. Why? Because the human mind can believe anything, you know. I can believe that I have definitely experienced this morning upon awakening a large troop of hippopotamuses in beautiful uniforms, because I like to have beautiful uniforms, marching down with a marching band on Wilton Place. And you know what? It doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it true. The truth is something else. The truth is something that is authentic within itself, and that cannot be taken away. And such truth is available to us. It is available to us because it already resides in us, and it merely needs to grow, it merely needs to transform, it merely needs to have a larger area of expression. And when it does, then with it come great and wonderful benefits that we never thought could be. That is why the New Testament says that we shall know the truth, and the truth will make us free. It will make us free of anxiety, it will make us free of suffering, it will make us free of anger and fear and all of these things, because where the truth has entered, all of these lesser demons which I have just enumerated take flight. And that is of extremely great importance and extremely great power. And so, as we will see further, the Gospel of Truth tries to bring to our attention how terribly important truth is, and how that truth can be found, how that if you don't give up, it will be there and receive you into its embrace, and then all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. So let's try to think a little bit of life and of our activities within life in terms of authenticity and truth. We have a truth. We have a truth telling something within us. Is this true? Is this going to lead me to greater truth? And I think that most of the time, without a doubt, we will get a correct answer, and then we will be led to the truth, and the truth will make us free of all of these things which we ought to be free of. So this is an introduction to the Gospel of Truth with a follow-up and within context the next time. And let us try to see ourselves as those who seek after, who work for, and who find and are ultimately transfigured by truth. And then indeed the true purpose of our being here in this strange world will be fulfilled. And there will be nothing but good, nothing but good, true, and nothing but beautiful ever after. Now that is a big prediction, but here I am, the Hollywood prophet, the successor of Criswell, and it can happen, it has happened, and it will happen. Thank you very much.